the governor of Utah signed the new law basically making plural marriage an infraction.
We're like no longer felons for our living our religion.
Hey guys, it's Katie from Without a Crystal Ball. Welcome back to my channel. It is March 22nd. We're back at it Monday mornings. This weekend was one of those weekends where I had so much information coming into me. And if you missed some of my videos that I put up over the weekend, I did a couple live streams and just talked about some information that I've been getting about the Duggars. The information was coming in fast and furious, and I will be putting out some more videos in the coming weeks with all of this information. But there's a lot for me to research and unpack, but hang tight on all of that, and if you missed those, check them out up here. So we're gonna get into Sister Wives. Last night was episode, I don't even know, 6 maybe of the season, and this was all about different wives, different rules. And the Mr. and Mrs. Browns, Mr. and Mrs. Browns are all in the middle of the pandemic. And it's hitting them all very differently. If you remember last week, Janelle made the decision that she was going to have Kody not come over because she could not control what her sons were doing. And she was making the sacrifice for the family in order to keep everyone else safe. Kody bristled at this because he didn't like the idea of not being able to see his children. So they are filming themselves now because camera crews could not be there. So they used their phones. They had a remote camera that they used for their interviews, and they did nearly all of the filming themselves. And so the filming is quite a bit different. And I will say for this episode, you get to see the kids more. So that part was cool. There's lots of misinformation going on right now in the family. There's lots of worry going on. And if you can put yourself back in those places of a year ago, a lot of us had no idea what to expect. So many of us were questioning it. I remember thinking, oh, it can't be that much worse than the flu. We had no idea. There was conflicting information coming out, and seeing them deal with the ever-changing environment it was in the very beginning, it just sort of reminds me of how far things have changed and how they haven't changed. But anyways, Janelle is really kind of scared that things are going to get worse. She's worried about keeping the family safe. She doesn't want him to come over for at least 2 weeks, which has kind of made her sad. But at the end of the day, she wants to do this to make everyone safe. Christine is actually worried about Janelle because she thinks that Janelle is going to be lonely, not having Kody around. And she thinks that, it's going to create some issues within the family. And Kody is super upset that he's not going to be able to see his kids.
The hardest part for me is being separated from Janelle and Savannah, Gabriel.
And he actually kind of gets teary-eyed when he talks about Savannah, and he talks about not being able to see Gabriel. And, he gets a little bit irritated that Janelle is not doing what he believes she should be doing by keeping her kids home like everyone else. All the other sister wives are following protocols. So you start to see a divide here, and the family is a little bit irritated with Janelle because Janelle, they kind of feel like, is not following the rules, whereas Christine is staying home with her girls, and she has girls that are still in high school and still Gwendolyn and Isabel are like seniors and juniors in high school, and knowing that they are still very active in their social lives and they're not going out and doing things. Unlike Gabriel, who can't stay home and doesn't care to stay home because it doesn't matter to him. But we'll get there in a minute. So they all have their kids and they're all hunkered down in their houses. They're starting to worry that this might start to affect the family. So the decision has been made by the family, and this is irritating to the women because Kody decides that he's going to be the only one that moves from family to family, and that the rest of them are not going to see each other because they want to keep everyone safe. And the thought process is that they want to make sure that everyone is in a place where they're not getting infected and they're minimizing their exposures. And so his plan is to try to be as careful as possible, not go out, not go to places, just go in between the homes. Now, Christine doesn't really understand that, and she's kind of upset because she wants to see the other kids. And Audrey and Mariah are in town, and Kody's made this decision that none of the other families are going to see each other. And that means that Kody can go visit Mariah and Audrey, but but Christine is upset that she won't be able to.
But then after the quarantining is over, does that mean we're going to be able to hang out? No, not according to Kody's rules. So
it's very clear that Christine wants to be able to see Audrey and Mariah. And I really love this about Christine, is that she's very, she loves these kids so much. And so she's not able to go, and she's just irritated about that. They're all kind of doing the best that they can within all of this. Mary admits in her confessional that Kody's probably not gonna come over. He'll only come over to maybe see Mariah and Audrey. Kody then admits in his confessional that he has just stopped dating Mary. There's just nothing there, and he just doesn't have much of a relationship with her. He says, I see her every once in a blue moon, and that's about it. Kody then is seen calling Mariah, and they start having an argument.
Everybody struggles with a bad economy. Some of us would struggle with the death of a loved one.
But Dad, so many people are going to die.
A human life is far more important to me than a single dollar or $1 million.
Mariah and Kody have a debate about whether or not it's responsible for them to shut down the economy or care about people's health. And Christine is like so against them getting into politics, because she says, like, she always tells Kody not to talk to them about politics, and they're going back and forth, and he's just like, well, the whole economy needs to stay open. And I mean, if only some people are going to pass away. And then Mariah gets like very hard, and she's like, no, like, this is going to end up with a lot of people passing away, and we need to care about that. And Mariah, in her confessional, even says, I don't care about the economy. I care about people, and we need to keep people safe. And they're kind of going round and round, and Kody's talking about losing civil liberties, and he's all being very libertarian with his beliefs. And even though they can't like help it, they're fighting about politics. And I think this is probably an issue that happens a lot. With that being said, once they start going back and forth and they start having this argument, then Mariah gets off the phone with her dad, because he doesn't seem to understand the magnitude and the reason for why the economy is shutting down, or why they're starting to think about putting, a stay-at-home order on, and like only having essential workers and essential places open. So she's like, oh my God, I have to take a nap.
After that conversation,
Go take a nap.
because that was just like too much for me.
I feel like that after every conversation with Kody, every single one. I feel like I have to go take a nap.
Because she was so exhausted after having that conversation with her dad, and Christine like laughed about that and was just like, that's how I feel like every single time I talk to Kody, I have to take a nap.
I'm not kidding. You know what I'm going to do when I get home after this? I'm going to go take a nap.
So Kody's not going to go see Mary, but he will go see Mariah and Audrey. Audrey and Mariah need to take a nap. Christine needs to take a nap. And then you cut to Janelle, who's sitting and talking to her kids. And so she's sitting down with Gabriel, with Savannah, and Garrison to talk about their plans. And she tells them that their dad is not going to come over for a couple of weeks. And they don't blame their mom. Like, Savannah's like, I don't blame you. I would want to keep the little kids safe. But, she tells the kids, like, Dad's going to call you. And then Gabe's like, he never calls me. And then, Janelle's like, you could call your dad. But then Gabe sort of drops this bomb that he has this girlfriend. And then Gabe and Kody, there's this, like, fight that happens. Like, it's an indirect fight where you can tell that Cody's really irritated with Gabe, and Gabe is really irritated with Kody. So Kody is upset because Janelle says that Gabe has a brand new girlfriend, and they're in this very lovey-dovey stage, and because of that, they're spending a lot of time together, and he's not staying home or social distancing. And Kody said he's not thrilled that, like, Gabe is not staying home, and that he's not thinking about anyone else in the family. And he's irritated because of Gabe's need to see the girlfriend. It affects his whole ability to see his kids, and all he wants to do is see his kids. So she says Janelle, for her part, doesn't really understand the severity of everything at this point in time. And she's like trying to like tell Gabe, maybe you could do a better job. Janelle thinks that like Gabe could be doing a better job, but at the same time, Gabe's just like, I'm not going to social distance. Why would I social distance? Dad's not coming over anymore. And then he gets really mad that his dad isn't going to go like to their house. And he's like, he thinks it's really unfair that Kody is gonna see the other moms, and that everything is gonna fall on Janelle, and then they're not gonna get to see their dad.
I'm of the opinion, and a lot of the other siblings are of the opinion, that all the moms should be quarantining the kids together in one group rather than
he thinks that all the kids should be able to get together, that all the families should be able to social distance together. He thinks that, you know, I don't care what my dad says, like, I want to see my siblings. Then when he finds out that his dad is not going to be there, then he's like, well, whatever. If my dad's not coming around, then I'm not going to social distance, and I'm not going to I'm not going to stay home. And, you know, as Janelle's like trying to prod him and push him to stay home, he's just like, no. And he's like, I go to school, everything's social distance, we're all wearing
Dad's
masks.
not going to be here for a month. So I don't see a point in me not going to see friends and stuff for at least these initial 2 weeks. I'm cool.
I think it was shortly after that the schools, most colleges went to virtual. So, but anyways, Robin is even a little bit like agrees that like the relationships between all the families is really starting to suffer. And they also start talking about how all the moms are making their own decisions. And Kody is just irritated at Janelle that she cannot control her kids better. But Garrison and Gabe are adults. As much as Janelle wants to say that, like, you know, I want you to stay home, legally, they can do whatever they want. They're 18, 20 years old, I think, and there's nothing she can do to stop it. All she can do is try to encourage them to do what's best, but they're part of that group of individuals, of that young population that just did not take the pandemic seriously and still doesn't, because they don't feel like it affects them and it doesn't matter to them because they need to go out and be social. So anyways, after that whole debacle with Gabe and nothing gets really resolved, she can't really convince him to stay home. Kody's irritated because all he wants to do is see his kids, and Gabe is mad at his dad, and Kody's mad at Gabe. So he got into an argument with Mariah, and he got into an argument indirectly with Gabriel. So then Robin and Kody find out that there's no longer, that the polygamy law has changed. So they get a call from the Darger family, which lets them know that the bill that they'd been in, the bill had passed, and that they had reduced polygamy from a felony to an infraction. And they were super excited about this. And they sit down to talk to the kids about it, and they all are kind of like happy hearing this news. They no longer fear that they're going to be felons. And the kids share their thoughts, like they're really happy. They even talk about how, you know, if they really wanted to open this up to the world, let these polygamists, let the plural wives get marriage license, because then that takes away some of the power from the men. And then Robin's like, yeah, because then they can sue for child support if they get divorced. Then there's more legal requirements for the dads. And they talked about how, you know, this will help clean up some of the problems. So while some people practice polygamy and they're not doing really bad things, other people are. And he references like the FLDF. He references Warren Jeff's group in Southern Utah. And he's like, you know, if we really want to fix what's happening in Southern Utah, we need to make it so these people can come forward. And I was totally on board with the group that wanted to keep it as a felony. I also understand from this perspective that because it's such a widespread issue in Utah, they have to find a way so that families and women that are stuck in situations like that have a way out where they're not going to fear that they're going to go to prison for 5 years if they report something or lose their children. So there has to be some sort of happy medium, and I'm hoping that this might be it. But he said they will still prosecute all of the laws and the bad things that happen. So it won't stop them from looking at families that might be doing the child brides or the other stuff that goes on with polygamy that happens in Southern Utah.
If anybody's breaking other laws that have to do with polygamy, like the culture of polygamy in Southern Utah, then they'll be prosecuted as felons.
Janelle's kind of upset that they don't get to celebrate with the family. They say that it's kind of anticlimactic. The COVID cases are also starting to rise at this time. And they also have to sit down and kind of talk about how the kids might not graduate. So Aurora and I think Gwendolyn were about to graduate, and they were canceling prom. They might not be able to walk for the graduation. And so Aurora got really emotional about that because it was like something that she's always looked forward to. And she's like, you know, I was born and we were going to be a class of 2020 and we thought it would be so neat, and this like whole year sucks. Kody actually threatens to sue the state of Utah because he basically says that, you know, if he got a ticket for being a polygamist in Utah, the first thing he would do is sue the state of Utah for the infraction and then try to dismantle all of polygamy. He said that he's angry, he's bitter, he hates the state of Utah for what they've done to his family, and that because of that, he would be that petty and sue them to get rid of all of it.
Cohabitation in Utah, I would turn around and sue the state for the violation of my civil rights to sue them again. I relished that experience. I'll mortgage Coyote Pass.
So he's like threatening to sue the state, and Robin's just like, oh my God, stop, ah! And that's what happens there. So then Christine is really happy, and she sits her girls down, and this is all happening in the middle of the stay-at-home orders coming in. So Christine talks to her kids about how Utah, the laws change, and they're just like, oh, yay. And then Christine says that, you know, they should move back to Utah. So she talked about growing up, that she was always afraid that her dad was going to be taken away from her because of these laws. And so the idea that her kids won't have to grow up in that kind of world anymore made her really happy. And it's a fear that she no longer has to have, making it an infraction. And so she wants to move back to Utah to be with her family. And her daughters are just like, no, I don't want to move. And they're like, what about Coyote Pass? And she's like, we haven't even built. Let's sell Coyote Pass. Let's move back to Utah. And Gwendolyn, Isabel, truly, none of them want to leave. They want to stay in Flagstaff. But Christine is like, the next time I see Kody, I'm going to talk to him about moving to Utah. I don't care if the girls don't want to go. So Christine, now with this new law passing, wants to move back to Utah. But none of the other family members want to do that. So I think this is going to be a hard push for her at this point in time. But she is very adamant about selling the property and moving. And then we're going to start seeing them have the stay-at-home order, which is going to be what happens next week. And they're also going to start talking about wanting to move to Utah. So that will be next week's episode. So all in all, Kody got into a fight with Gabe. He got into a fight with Janelle. He got into a fight with Mariah. And Janelle, according to the family, isn't doing enough to keep her family safe or to keep her kids away from the virus. And Kody's angry at Janelle. And so for the first time in a few years, we're finally seeing confrontation between Janelle and Kody. And we're starting to see a divide that is starting to break apart the family. And there is a great concern that this pandemic that we're in is going to ruin their family. So what are your thoughts about all of this? Tell me in the comments below. Bye, guys.